Hello, Realtors. Welcome back to GADcast, brought to you by the North Shore-Barrington Association of Realtors. My name's Joe Roth. I'm your local government affairs director here at NSBAR. It's that time of year again for property tax notices to be sent with the coupons. To talk a little bit more about that and the process here in Lake County, we got today's guest, Holly Kim. Let's get started. Holly, thanks for taking the time to join us. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
So what's going on in your office? What's the latest?
Well, about a week ago, we sent out my love letters all across Lake County, and some of you may have seen these property tax bills. So I'm here with you today to go over it, answer any questions that you think, the realtors might have. I also wanted to give a few heads up of changes this year. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's talk changes. What's new?
So this year, the bills are coming out with a code for e-billing. So on this one, let's see if I could, this one's right here where it's yellow. So it'll say e-notices online, and there's a little scrap in there on like how to sign up for it. But going forward, people can sign up to get their bills by email for the first time ever in the year 2021, finally. And it just so happened that the vendor that we use for merchant processing, we renegotiated the check fees down to nothing. And the e-billing, yeah, I would have liked it a year ago for the pandemic, but now it's better than never. So now it's free to pay by check with your account and routing number online or on the phone. So you have two different ways to pay without having to, use any gas to drive over here or to pay any postage like you traditionally would do when you stick a check in there and mail it to me. So now it's like fee free, right? But our e-billing vendor uses the same merchant processor. So that was like a great plot twist. And so now you can sign up for e-billing and pay for free with check all in the one go.
That's a lot easier. I find personally that I can never find the stamps that I bought from the last time I needed to mail a letter, which was, probably 6 months ago. So I have probably hundreds of loose stamps floating around my house at this point.
Yeah, and if they're the forever stamps, it's not like they're accruing any other values aside from they're just that one price. Not fun for stamp collectors. But yeah, so I wanted to let you guys know because if realtors would let their base, their customers, I do know that a lot of them have newsletters, a lot of them do Facebook posts, and this would be some really good content to put out there that people would actually share.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you made brief mention of the pandemic and everything. Last year, you guys had a pretty big change in moving to the 4 installments we were doing last year. Can you talk us through a little bit, like what, kind of on the surface, you think 4 instead of 2, okay, that's, no big deal. But there's a lot that goes into that, right?
Yeah, so last year for COVID relief, we did the 4 payment option. And the really interesting thing is the tax bills were already out there. And so, here they are all loose and everyone's already paying, and then they want us to change it like midstream. Having a background in like tech and .coms, I knew that we could do it. It was just a matter of like, how much are you willing to pay and what are you willing to accept, right? I think I turned in like 8 pages worth of side effects to the county board, said this is all of the stuff that might happen, even things we don't think about might happen, but like, it's just something to think about. And if this is something we can decide to do, like we can do it. So there was a 4 payment option with emergency coding. And I'd say about 40,000 homeowners took advantage of that. And that's a huge deal because we have almost 300,000 parcels. So that was a good amount of people who took it. And people loved it, right? They asked like, are you doing it again this year? This year, I went in front of the finance committee and I presented twice with a PowerPoint slide on how we could do it correctly and implement it for the future. And so with like 4 stubs so that the banks can accept it, because one of the things that happened that I don't think anyone could have foreseen if we didn't live it through the pandemic is we had a ton of refunds to do because there were no official stubs for people to pay. So that made it difficult, for realtors to calculate who's going to pay what, how much of your taxes are left. Also for mortgage companies, title companies, real estate attorneys, like they all lived through that. I got all the feedback. And if we were going to roll it out permanently, we'd have to do it the right way with coding, with 4 different stubs. That way, everything's down on paper and coded right. That also meant, though, we were basically doubling our work, right? Because what we would do in 2 installments would then become 4, and double the amount of payments to process, double the amount of reconciling on our accounting end. So anyway, this was all in our presentation. I have this glorious PowerPoint if you ever want to see it. And the finance committee decided that this probably wasn't the year to do so, with all the limitations from COVID in terms of like sales tax revenue or any revenue that the county was making, then to spend the money on coding and additional staffing, that this probably wasn't the best time to do it. So I said, that's fair. I actually, I understand. So if they ever wanted to revisit it in the future, this PowerPoint template has everything laid out. In fact, it doesn't even need to be me. It could be anyone at any point. Just know that it will cost about this much and take about 1.5 fiscal years to do so. And so, it's there. So
Well,
all that to say, there is no 4 payment option for this year.
well, and it's definitely good to know though, and it's good to have that plan in place so that down the road this can be reviewed. And it sounds like you've done a great job of putting all the pieces in place and having the game plan ready to go when it is time to move forward on that. And you just mentioned the sales tax revenue and stuff. Is there anything you can share on kind of how the revenue situation and the fiscal health of the county looks from the treasurer's perspective?
So there's a separate finance department to the county, and over
Mm-hmm.
here at the treasurer's office, what we do is invest the funds and the reserves, in addition to being like the bank of Lake County. So overall, we still maintain our AAA bond rating. I would say like we're doing fine. The ARPA funds helped. The CARES Act funds helped. That being said, I think all of us, including small business owners, that's time you're not going to get back when nothing was happening, last March and everyone was staying home. So there was certainly no gas taxes from that. One of the things I can talk about is how our investments did. So here at the Lake County Treasurer's Office, we wear 2 hats. One is that we are literally the collector of taxes. So everyone gets a tax bill, we cash it, and then we distribute it to all the taxing bodies. And those are who you see on the tax bill, the library, the park district, like 3 different schools, in everyone's district, and your village or municipality. Now, the other hat that we wear is that we are the bank for Lake County here, the building, and we invest their funds. We have about $354 million in investments and cash that we manage. But just so you know, Joe, I know I'm going in like a little nerding out here with the numbers and deep diving,
I
but if
love
I
it.
could, if I could rein it back a little bit, one of the things you guys should know is annually we used to do about $2 million in interest income. And when I first got here, I actually met with all the fiduciaries. I told them my investment philosophy is a little different. The Illinois State Public Funds Investment Act allowed for more corporate bonds, and those kinds of changes weren't made previously in this office. So I met with them. I said, this is my risk tolerance. Like, we're not allowed to invest in anything that goes down. So that being said, why wouldn't I maximize like what we're available to, invest in? And so we mixed in more municipal bonds and corporate bonds. And I'm happy to say actually last fiscal year, even though, things were down in terms of CDs, money markets, those were abysmal, but we raked in $9.7 million in interest income with those changes. It was the corporates and the municipal bonds that like saved us. So usually 2 million. After the changes, 9.7. I'm actually very proud of that.
I'm going to call it 10 because that's a big change, and it definitely gives you a lot more. Having a growing reserve definitely. I mean, it helps across the board, right?
Right. All of our investment incomes, like the money generated from those investments goes into the general fund. So none of
Yeah.
that comes back to my office. It goes into the counties. But I'm very happy we were able to do that during a very difficult year.
Well, absolutely. And having that money in the general fund, and quite honestly, having a healthy reserve balance, it's critical in times like these. When you look at some of the municipalities that did a really good job of in Lake County of building a reserve just in case days like this happen, and sure enough, they do. You see that there isn't any sort of excess burden or new additional burden on homeowners, right? Because we're already very, very dependent on them. And so it's fiscally sound and I think a very responsible approach. And I love hearing it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it happened. That being said, I will tell everyone who's listening and their mothers that don't expect numbers like that next year, because the Feds have cut rates down, 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 down to almost nothing, as you all know, because there's like no home inventory, because these rates are so low, everyone's buying.
Yeah, yeah. So it's quite an innovation there you have then. And I appreciate that, and kind of an evolving policy. But one of the things that's still pretty consistent is I know there's a lot of homeowners like myself where I write one check every month and I don't even write it. It's all, all transferred online. But, I pay my taxes, my insurance, all of that into the bank escrow. That's all handled. Is there anything homeowners like myself should know, or that it'd be helpful from where you're sitting if realtors reminded their clients about this?
Yeah, so I'm also on an escrow, and one of the things here, I'm going to pull that bill back up again, that's really useful that they should know about is statutorily we have to send everyone a copy of their bill, whether you choose to get that online next year or by paper. You still have to get one. So this is the part that I would have everyone really interested in, is part that says taxing body, right? And it lists every single taxing body in Lake County that affects you personally. There's no state of Illinois here. So the sample I'm looking at says College of Lake County, the Forest Preserve, Round Lake Fire Protection District, Round Lake Library, Township of Avon, and Round Lake Area School District number 116. So this is like a hyper local, everything that affects them. Now, the reason why this would be useful for realtors to tell their clients is that on here it says changed from prior year, and I could see that it went up $124.18. So the useful part is if your escrow is short by any amount, you get that letter too from your mortgage company saying your escrow was short, you owe $900, right? And I mean, in this case, it'll just be 124. But we've all received that letter, and you're like, what does this mean? Like, am I sending another check to you? And then it also says like, if you don't, we're going to redo your mortgage and this is what you're going to pay every month, right? So that you pay it monthly. But this way, when people go, why does that happen? Like, there's an explanation for everything, and it's actually right here. So even people who get escrow should not throw this away, but they should take a look at it because it will be
Fantastic.
affecting
Yeah.
them one way or another. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great information, Holly. Very much appreciated. So before we sign off here, is there anything else you want to add in? Anything you want to sign out with?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to have one of those, like how to understand your tax bill workshops, I'm actually willing to do those with either your assessor or with yourself. There is a real estate agent that I think in the next month we'll be scheduling one, like a Spanish session on like understanding your tax bill and your assessment. And I think this is a real like service that, if you want to host one, definitely I'd be willing to, because the more people who understand, right, the more that they can make an informed decision on where do they want to live, like in town or unincorporated, or in this town where there's one tax rate, or a different town, right? And so these are all like empowerment type knowledge issues. Also, another thing that we launched, which if you want to put in your newsletters or even on Facebook posts, is we launched this Fiscally Fit program that has all sorts of financial literacy in it. So, whether it's one coming up actually on May 13th is avoid these mistakes before buying a home. And that's in English and Spanish. And, I've actually heard this one a couple times and I love it. The presenter is great. And he says something like, if you're about to get a mortgage, I don't know why people do this, and yet they do, but don't go out and get a car, right? Like people start getting that little taste of like, I want to buy these things, and then they'll head over to the car dealership. Well, that will tank your opportunity to get a mortgage. So it's things like that.
Yes.
And the Fiscally Fit program can be found on our website, which is lakecountytreasurer.info, or you can Google Lake County, Illinois Treasurer, and it'll take them to their page, to our page.
Excellent. Great information. Holly, it's always a pleasure chatting, catching up, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.
And that does it for this episode of GADcast. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to discuss, just email me. It's joe@nsbar.org. Until next time, be well, everyone.